Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good to see everyone on here. If you could put your name, location of where you're based, and perhaps your organization in the chat so we could see who's on this webinar, this lunch and learn, your name, city, state, and organization in the chat. Billy's in the house. I have to make sure that was
Can you
known.
hear me? Hey, Rana.
Waco.
Okay, Waco.
All right. All right. Toronto's here. Now we can start. Now we can really get started. Um, Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We're excited to get into what could be hard conversations. We shall see. Um, but as you're joining, please feel free to put your name, city, and organization in the chat. And we're actually excited because this session is really Lunch and Learn is really meant for kind of inter or industries as well for different industries to also process scenarios together. Really being able to learn from one another on how conflict is managed in their workplace. Perhaps you have policies in place right now that are guiding you during conflict, or you're looking to really develop those procedures and language for your organization as well, to be able to be proactive. We know that conflict is inevitable in the workplace. We'll get into research on how it is impacting the workplace, how it's impacting team dynamics, and therefore it does impact the mission that you are trying to outlive within your city and within your organization. So we want to be able to paint a picture for you in regards to research, but then also have practical scenarios that we can get to have conversations in the room as well. So we're going to get into one of our spark the conversation questions, just so that we hear where everyone is at in terms of the Olympics. If you could put in the chat, if you watched the Olympics, what was your favorite event in the Paris 2024 games? Favorite events in the Paris 2024 games. If you could put that in the chat, it might take y'all a couple of seconds to gymnastics. I knew that was coming. The breakdancing, why are you lying, Hyatt? Swimming, Australia's breakdance. I knew that was gonna be in there. I think that might have been ruined for everybody. Snoop Dogg. I love that. Yes. Gymnastics, swimming. Yep. Yep. That's awesome. Men's USA basketball. Puerto Rico made it in there too, a little bit, and did not watch. Yep. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Thanks for engaging with that. So a little bit about myself. My name is Elisa Vasquez. I'm the CEO and president of Ed-Enuf, and we get to walk alongside organizations of different industries and meet them at where they're at in their journey of belonging. And I will not be too afraid to say that some organizations aren't really ready for language. And so really we have a niche and a specialty when we're able to work alongside organizations in creating new language, creating new policy, and really having organizations understand the fluidity from policy to implementation of culture. It should all be cohesive. And when you walk into your organization, there should be a culture that is lived out by values, beliefs, and norms. And so as a woman of color, I've been able to navigate different spaces and working in Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., and other industries. And so really made it kind of a passion of mine to be able to study the science behind organizations. There is a social science behind organizations. It's called organizational psychology and industrial psychology. And so what we love to do is take high level theoretical concepts and bring them down to the practical so that you could begin to live that out within your organization as well, to know the culture and what you're designed to see. So I'm excited to jump in. I'll pass the mic to my colleague Josh so we can go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Elisa. That was a great way to get started. And I love talking about alignment, like you just were, where we get to equip leaders to help their organizations live out the values that they want to live out. So my background, I've been a consultant with Ed-Enuf since 2019 and got to work with a lot of different organizations and, at these different levels, but specifically, I enjoy the long-term strategic change that comes from strategic planning and consistent effort. But I really enjoy learning because I love people and I love sessions where we can be co-learners together. So this lunch and learn for me is a treat to get to be able to uh, address some common important issues in the workplace. So I want to just get us at a posture. This is classic culture enough, learning environment, cultural guidelines. So we want to have a posture of listening and trying to understand one another. We're going to keep it respectful. We understand that disagreement is normal, but we are going to intentionally not belittle the experience of somebody else. Everyone is welcome to participate. I hope that you feel like you can have your camera on or at different points, either be on the chat or actually, raise your hand or turn your mute off and ask a question or add some of your experience, some of your knowledge, and some of your questions to the group. And using I statements, speaking on behalf of yourself, your own experiences is the most helpful as we even examine other situations. Another thing, we are going to explore scenarios in the workplace, and we ask that as you're in breakout groups, that you just respect the other people involved, and there's no need to share names with each other. And anything that somebody else shares with you, we ask that you would just hold that confidentially, because the purpose is not to share news or gossip about organizations, but we're all trying to learn about conflict management. So today our objective is to talk about conflict management strategies and how conflict in place impacts the place of work. We're going to look at common reactions to workplace conflicts and look into insights and signs of early detection so that conflicts can be managed at lower levels. And we're going to be sharing the mic, trying to develop genuine curiosity. And sometimes that takes a little bit of effort, but we're all trying to develop that, and we're trying to lead with love and make space for learning mistakes so that we all feel that psychological safety so that we can speak out of our moment on our journey, and we'll all try to help each other out. This is a legal disclaimer. We're not lawyers and we're not giving you legal advice for you to adhere to. Anything that we're offering is information and research that we're trying to equip you to put into practice in your context and that you're responsible for. And now, speaking about passing the mic, I shall pass back to the CEO.
Yes, thank you, Josh. So we're here to talk about the problem. And for all my confident avoidant people, you might get a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. That's why we're in this together, in it to win it. The problem really is that conflict happens and goes unchecked. And so using research-backed data, really understanding these data points will help you also understand the dynamics within your workplace. And so right here, 70% of employees are actually avoiding difficult conversations with their boss, their higher up, their supervisor, their colleagues, or their direct report. So there's a massive kind of shift to be able to say that I don't want to talk about it and avoiding it as much as possible, due to the uncomfortability, due to not knowing what to say, also due to fear of what the repercussions may be. So really looking at this very drastic data point that may or may not be a reflection of where you work as well. 53% of employees are handling toxic situations by simply ignoring them. Again, we'll get into the strategies of conflict management, but we'll also get into some toxic traits that you may see that could be red flags for a manager or for the workplace in general. And when these are not handled, that is where culture gets the brunt of it as well. When these are left unaddressed and unnoticed, and really not being able to talk about and just really name the elephant of the room, the entire culture will be impacted by it, which we already know impacts productivity, it impacts dialogue, it impacts the place where you feel like you are mission driven and you should be there. That starts to dwindle handle. And so we really want to protect the culture of the organization. And how do we do that? Is we're going to go into different practicals and scenarios of how you can now protect the organization, the culture within your organization as well, by addressing conflict and addressing it in a healthy way. So we're going to ask for a little bit transparency, a little bit of interpersonal risk here. We're going to go into a barometer, and with each prompt, I'll ask you to say, one, you strongly disagree. That's not me at all. I don't know what you're talking about, Elisa. I shouldn't even be here. Or three, neutral, depends on the day. Or maybe five, I completely agree with that prompt as well. So the first prompt is those I work with would describe me as conflict avoidant. This is a safe space. Please feel safe. Those I work with would describe me as conflict avoidant. One, no, that's not me at all. I know how to sit into conflict very well. Five, yep, you got me, you caught me. That's me. So I would love to see some numbers here. One, I completely agree. I disagree. Five, I agree. That is me. We have twos. All right, some threes here. Thanks for that honesty. Honesty. Some threes depending on the day, depending on how I'm feeling. And any other numbers. Got some twos, threes. All right. I'm gonna test y'all in this because that means that y'all could sit in some conflict here. Threes. Okay. All right, got it. Thank you for that. Next one is I have been previously trained in conflict resolution or conflict management in the workplace. I have been previously trained in conflict resolution. One, not at all. I have not been trained at all. There's no trainings that I have received. I'm not on Ed-Enuf currently, so therefore I don't have any resources. Or five, we talk about conflict a lot. We talk about conflict in the workplace. There's a training for that. Okay, one, not really. Three, okay. Maybe there's some sessions on conflict. And three. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Got ones and threes. I don't see a five here. I will hopefully coach enough people could put a five. Hopefully I'm doing a good job with that one, but we'll see. This is why we do the lunch and learns. That's awesome. So the next one is going to be when a conflict arises, I notice a sensation or a feeling in my body. So when conflict arises, either my chest starts pounding hard, there's a knot in my stomach. I'm very aware of how my body kind of interacts with conflict. My fist balls up, my throat kind of gets tight or dry. And that means that one, you have no kind of connection to your body when it comes to emotion. You're still trying to figure that out, or you don't really have any physical reactions. Or five, you clearly know when there's something wrong, and you kind of feel it physically as well. I see some fives. Okay. So we're pretty self-aware people on this call. Awesome. Pretty self-aware people. Okay, great. Great, great, great. If you've ever taken EQ or have looked into EQ, self-management is a part of that. And when we feel emotions in the workplace, especially when it's has to do with conflict, it actually impacts the tasks that is in front of us to do. And so we go through workshops in regards to how do you self-regulate your body, even in the workplace when there's a meeting about to happen, but you just got out of a conflict with a manager, that actually will happen in the workplace. And so teaching people how to self-regulate, even in between meetings and in between projects, because research also states that when your body is not regulated due to conflict, it impacts your performance as well. So I thank you for the transparency here. All right, last one. I have experienced conflict as a catalyst for transformation, meaning conflict can also be used for change. Conflict can also be used to clarify. conflict can be used to be able to understand someone's perspective that is different from yours. And you sit there until you understand, oh, wow, that's why you were saying that. Now I understand where you were coming from. I had no idea that that was your framework, or I had no idea that that was the context. So conflict really bringing breakthrough within your workplace, really bringing healthy conversation when until you're on the other side of conflict. So a lot of okay, some fives and threes. Yep, that's really, really good. And that's really looks like there's a mix of answers there where perhaps you've had conflict in the workplace and maybe it's with a manager or a supervisor or a direct report and you keep having that conflict or you don't really see the good that's coming out of it. What our hope is that some of the strategies that we give you and the language really empowers you to be able to say, even if you're having constant conflict with a team member or with a direct report, that some of these strategies will be able to help you get to the other side where you are seeing the transformation that can happen due to conflict as well.
Thanks everybody for participating in that. We're still trying to warm up the group and see how we can, keep everybody engaged as we're learning. But this graphic pretty much it attempts to sum up the Kilman conflict mode instruments, which is a classic organizational framework for strategies of conflict management. And these are the major ones. And each of them, I believe, has a time and a place when they're either useful, where they're strategic, or where they're necessary. And I just want to do a little bit of a around the graphic here, and then we can pause for a minute to see if you would share some of your examples or maybe some of your questions. But Elisa already brought out avoiding, and that's in the bottom left corner there. Let's hope that this doesn't come up again. I believe that Bravely said it was 70% of people are currently avoiding a conflict with their supervisor. So that's a strategy that's often used. Now, whether that's the best strategy, oftentimes it's not, but sometimes in work situations, there's a certain level of demand for production and things you have to get done. And then there's other stuff that you can opt out of in terms of whether it's a stressful conversation or you can see a conflict coming ahead of time and you're able to strategically avoid that. That's positive ways to avoid that. Just living in Philadelphia, I'll put out here that you can have a conflict as soon as you walk out your door within 30 seconds, almost every day. And if you drive your car anywhere, there's an opportunity for you to have a conflict. And avoiding sometimes is a wise strategy to navigate the city, because
I agree.
there's a good amount of people out here who are in the United States, especially, we're socialized for competing. And
Mm.
the Olympics were an example of just sport in general, um, pits us against one another in a competition. And with conflict, a lot of times it's either my way or the highway with leadership, or uh, for even people who are peers in the work environment, it's really about one of the ideas is going to win out and one of them is going to lose out. And sometimes that's good. If you're organizing for social change and you're trying to build a grassroots movement together to do, say, social justice work, you want some of that competition energy, some of that, let's rally together because we're going for victory. We're going for a specific goal. But just because somebody else is presenting an idea to you, it doesn't mean it's appropriate necessarily for you to just want to compete with it. The compromising, and we're going to get into these tools also as tools for negotiation, but compromising is I think gets towards what I think is the most effective strategy most of the time. But compromising is when you give a little to get a little. You don't get everything that you wanted or from your perspective, but you get some of it, and you give up some, and likewise the person that you're in a conflict with as well. But collaborating is really the highest, most efficient level where highly diverse teams uh, really get to flex at how much diversity is a driver for innovation. And collaboration has to do with uh, understanding multiple perspectives and understanding the needs, the interests of others, and the strengths of others, and being able to try to weave that together into a strategic solution. So I'll pause. Actually, Elisa, I would just ask if you had anything you wanted to add before we could ask the room.
Absolutely. I don't know if you got to accommodating, but
Oh, thank you.
uh accommodating is also a way where you're also avoiding conflict and you're willing to just give in right at the moment in order to avoid whatever tension there may be. And so again, really understanding that there's a reason why you had a strategy or there's a reason why you made a decision. So really accommodating has to do with trusting your own thought process, trusting why you had a certain opinion, and really trying to have a space where you can explain why you want a certain thing to be decided rather than just quickly deferring for the sake of avoiding. And so that's a skill really that we probably all could learn as well.
Thank you for that. Would anybody else like to share an insight or a anecdote or maybe a question on one of these strategies? Anthony, I saw you put in the chat, but I apologize, I didn't see the moment. Would you expound on? Um,
Oh yeah, so when you mentioned like just getting into conflict, just opening your door and coming outside. So it was more so
Oh,
in Philadelphia. Yeah, seriously.
thank you. I know
Yeah.
about that.
No problem.
Anyone else? And again, and there's the dynamic of I think these different strategies can be useful at different times, but also the more uh, comfortable we become operating in these, we're able to see how somebody else is approaching a conflict. And for instance, if you could tell that somebody is being overly accommodating or avoiding you, and you're trying to have a conflict with them, it may be a reflection back to you to say, what about my conflict strategy is eliciting a response where people are avoiding me or accommodating too quickly? Because at least for me, for instance, in the past, that's how I knew that there was times where I was actually bringing a competing energy to conflict because people were deferring to me too quickly in a leadership setting and not always comfortable telling that to me. Well, we could, why don't we, Elisa, try to move it into something that is a little bit less abstract, maybe in
Mhm.
something relatable.
Yes, absolutely. So I will read the scenario out loud and we're gonna do breakout sessions. So we'll break you off into breakouts. This is being recorded, but your breakout sessions will not be recorded. So, go at it in the breakout groups, but, bring it back in. So I'm gonna read it out loud and then we'll also put it into the chat so that you can answer the questions that we have with the scenario. Scenario reads, during a weekly team meeting, the manager Casey requests that Angel and Cameron complete an important project before her upcoming vacation. Angel and Cameron run into an issue with setting an agreeable deadline. While Angel insists that they get it done in time, despite the changes, Cameron is concerned about the quality of the work and finds the proposed timeline unreasonable, but might be possible if other timelines are altered. Casey, in response, remarks that the weekly meeting is running over time, thanks them for being able to make the changes in the time, and ends the meeting abruptly. So Angel and Cameron have to decide on this deadline. So we're going to do breakout groups, and what we want you all to discuss is where exactly is the conflict in the room, as well as which conflict management style are being displayed or will be displayed. And then which style do you think you would be an effective strategy for resolving this issue. And we'll give you about 5 to 6 minutes to discuss among your team. And then when you get back, we would ask that one person shares what were the common themes that were discussed, or if this has happened to you in your workplace as well.
Hi, Ashley. How you doing today?
I had to look to make sure that there was more than one. If there was more than one Ashley,
Oh,
I'm doing well. How are you?
that's so cool. I'm great. I'm excited. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Glad to be here. It's so funny that my team and I were literally like the day before we got the notification for this training. We were discussing as part of one of our OKRs for the year to find some
Mhm.
conflict resolution and conflict management strategy training. And then you all popped up. So couldn't have been more perfect timing. So thank you.
That's so cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's really encouraging. All right. As people are returning, um, was there in your group, was there some commonalities, some things that you were seeing together? Was there some wisdom that you would have for the rest of us? I know timeline issues are a constant source of potential conflict, at least.
I'll speak from our group. I'll speak from my group. We discussed the fact that the supervisor really did not, based off of what the employees were saying, did not give a realistic timeline for the work that was needed. But not only that, but she was avoidant in listening to their concerns about um, the quality of work that they would be presenting and the timeline in which they had to present it, and kind of dismissed them and was avoidant to their discussion. So those were a couple of the things that we saw that could easily
Mhm.
drive you to conflict, and some you know conflict with with the manager.
Hmm. And it just illustrates how important it is for leadership to listen and understand. Thank you, Ashley, for getting us started.
And then I'll just jump in. We talked a little bit about the actual conflict between the two employees. I don't remember the
Hmm.
names, Angel and Cameron, because it looked like one was employing more of the collaborating, trying to say, I'm concerned about the quality of the work, but maybe we can meet the a deadline if we adjust these other ones. Whereas the other coworker was just not seeming to want to work with them.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for that, Janice. And that, yeah, Angel could have been competing with their peer, or maybe was uh, caving too fast for the supervisor, maybe the overly accommodating to the. There are people around when if the supervisor says anything, they say yes right away. It could have been that too, but we don't know. It's just a this is good wisdom. Is there be one more? I gotta admit, this is like my favorite part of these sessions when the smartest person in the room is the room. Okay, well, we'll have one more where we can get back into that. The American Society of Employers put together a really useful piece that gets at despite the amount of even mission-driven organizations in the United States, a lot of workplaces have the presence of toxic traits that make it very difficult to have a generative conflict when these traits are present. And I just want to put out there too that psychological safety and strategically and regularly implementing practices that increase that psychological safety are a ward against these kinds of traits and these kinds of behaviors that can lead to not just a unsatisfactory workplace experience, but actually leads to a decrease in retention where people are leaving jobs because of reasons like this. But rather than going off on each one of these, and we'll show you the reference so you can read the article, I just want to highlight a few of these, and I hope Elisa, you might want to go on one of these as well. But toxic positivity is one that um, you know is important to focus on because it's not just saying we must always the glass must be half full, but it's a way to even shut down when there are either negative experiences or negative feelings from people, there can be a filter to say we don't let that in here. We're keeping it all positive. This isn't in a workplace, but it's my daughter, my youngest is moving back into the dorms this weekend for her university experience. And she was saying to me, um, oh yeah, I'm moving out on Saturday. And I would joke to her to say, actually, do you mind saying that you're moving into the dorm instead of saying that you're moving out of our house? And that reframe was a joke because she understands toxic positivity too. I wouldn't make that joke in a workplace necessarily, but the just even constantly needing people to rephrase and reframe in order to come into a conversation. And really, we're hoping that psychological safety means that you can bring your full self to work. That includes a range of experiences and emotions. Another thing I wanted to highlight is gaslighting, and that in a workplace can be a lot of different things. But one of the things that happens when gaslighting is happening is that there's a person who doesn't take responsibility and shifts blame a lot. So the people that work closely with that person are constantly feeling like they're responsible for failure and are receiving blame, while the leader manages to not have any bit of it. It also has to do with um, changing, attempting to change a series of events, so whether it's changing the past or changing stories, so that people aren't as sure about their own experiences or their own realities. But that can be a very difficult thing to have a conflict about if somebody's not conscious about that, or if they don't want to acknowledge they're doing it. Elisa, which of these would you highlight for us?
Yeah, I would with those two that you mentioned, toxic positivity and gaslighting, I'll just name some phrases so that you all understand what it also sounds like, even if you can't put your finger on it at the moment. Um, Dismissing negative emotions would be, you shouldn't have let that get you so upset. They were just joking. You should not have, that should not have got you so riled up. They were just playing. That is an example of dismissing negative emotions. Or you'll never get anywhere talking like that. When you say when you're reacting in a negative way, you're not going to get anywhere in life. Um, so having people pretending that everything is fine, or pretending that an experience was okay, I'm sure that that comes with a tolerance of of what they're allowing in the workplace as well. And then another I'll bring to your attention is passive aggressive behavior. Again, this is something that we kind of coach individuals in identifying when this does come up in the workplace, because these are scenarios that you leave a conversation feeling like, that rubbed me the wrong way, but I don't know how to address it because I can't put my finger on it, or I can't describe it to someone. And so language like this is the goal, to help, to empower. And so passive aggressive behavior is really a defense mechanism that can vary in different degrees. And some people may only act passive aggressively when they're having a bad day. They're just having an off day. But if it's exhibited regularly, that's where there's going to be an issue, and it'll be an issue in the workplace and with team dynamics. And so passive aggressive behavior can look like backhanded compliments. Like, that's really surprising. You were promoted. Congrats. Thanks, but no thanks. That's an example of passive aggressive behavior. Passive aggressive people, they may also use sarcasm a lot. Saying great job when someone just made a mistake. Really inappropriate comments that people very often get away with. Um, Procrastination is a form of passive aggressiveness, not doing your part of the job, which impacts everyone else. Lateness is also a way to be passive aggressive, saying, I'm not going to really value your time. So I'm going to show up when I want to show up. Underhanded, people who are undermining someone's efforts or taking credit in front of an individual or a team. And then a sense of passive aggressive is also withholding information. So if you're in a team and you're working with a team lead or a project manager or you're doing patient care, really understanding that even withholding information is a way of mitigating and decreasing teams' productivity as well. So these are traits again that can hinder culture, but when addressed and when you have the language to be able to hold leadership accountable, hold managers accountable, that's when you can begin to see culture shift in a positive way.
Thanks, Lisa. And when something is as extreme as these, um, we're recommending that HR is involved. Like these are extreme examples of organizational culture in trouble, in having a sickness. We do want to think about just psychological safety is really the onus for providing that is on the organization. So there are ethical responsibilities of employers, and this is from the Harvard Business School online, but your employee handbooks generally address everybody's staff well-being, their rights, their duties, best practices, and what fairness policies are in place at the organization. So if you've worked with culture enough, we've certainly brought up to you probably at different points of, oh, how is that policy reflected in your handbook? Or how is and sometimes we've even analyzed those to say this could use a little more strength, because when the company understands that it's their role and responsibility to create these environments through policies, practices, and procedures, creating culture, it really opens up the best opportunity for everybody to experience that psychological safety and thrive in their work environment. And likewise, the expectation, there's different kinds of fairness that the organization should be providing as well. And a lot of conflict early on happens because of at the top of this slide with those ethical responsibilities. Some of those responsibilities were held too lightly, maybe, and fairness wasn't applied across the board. So some staff of the same level, one got more vacation time than the other, or where that kind of fairness wasn't evenly distributed. Elisa, would you say something about these types of fairness too?
Yeah, some examples, especially if you all are going through conflict training and you're also looking to really audit policies and procedures within your employee handbooks or HR policies. This terminology is what will go very well within your HR handbook or employee handbook, is the terminology of legitimate expectations, procedural fairness or justice. An example of that is that it refers to an employee being given an opportunity to defend themselves and raise up any other mitigating circumstances before a performance decision is reached. So really doing the due diligence of having an employee have the natural justice within the workplace, so that instead of quickly giving them a performance plan saying that you have 60 days to get it together or you're out, there has to be due diligence in the work environment for people to advocate for themselves, and done so in a safe environment so that they feel heard and they feel that their reasoning has gone and been reported and recorded as well. Another example that you can use for your policy creation is distributive justice or distributive fairness. And again, Josh mentioned it, equal pay, really understanding that employees receive the same pay for equal work. Fair outcomes are equitable, and that means really having the same PTO and really having also a fine line between work from home, remote policies in place, and that everyone has been given the access to that decision as well, whatever your policy, whatever you decide on that policy. And then organizations can provide equal distributive justice by communicating and enacting fair employment practices. So whatever is written in a handbook, please, 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 this happens all the time with our partners. They say it's written and someone should have read it, and therefore it's completed. Whenever you have a new policy or you're wanting to implement distributive justice or procedural justice in a policy, please do your due diligence in communicating that policy. Over communicate it in emails, your newsletter, your town hall meetings, really being able to communicate these policies will be able to give people the benefit of the doubt in that they have received information on how they can advocate for themselves when conflict does arise in the workplace as well. And we will give you a link to this Harvard Business Review so that you can take that language and start to implement it as well.
So briefly, these are, if especially if you're in a negotiating advocacy, you're a third party, but also just for yourself, these steps are really useful. And this is from the University of Kansas's Community Toolbox. But understanding the conflict, understanding the perspective, the experience, the interests of the others is crucial to coming towards a solution. A solution that isn't just, oh well, their perspective isn't as important as mine. Or like again to the traffic metaphor, where I was going was more important, that I needed to get there faster than you. That's why I cut you off. But understanding that somebody else had to get somewhere too can start to be like, okay, now we're starting to understand. Communication with the opposition, the process of brainstorming possible resolutions. This is where it requires trust and it requires curiosity, because if you're just emotionally worn down, or if the conflict has been drawing on, a time to brainstorm can be very difficult. So having that as part of the process is a creative interjection that is really useful. But choosing that best resolution rather than just the first one, sometimes a third party mediation can be real useful, and especially those organizations with robust HR departments and people who are, have some competencies in conflict resolution and in social management are really useful. But exploring alternatives, what is another way we can do this? But then when there are pressure tactics such as picketing or the threat to strike, or if there's stressful situations, just like you're not sure your coworker's music is too loud and you're not sure how to broach the topic. There at the workplace, there is going to be some coping. So developing those coping skills when you know that the situation is going to be difficult to change. But this is just a little bit heavier. We're going to move through it quickly, but just understanding also your own interests. Do I really want this particular way, or what am I trying to accomplish here? And maybe there's a way that these interests align, and maybe there's a way that if you're using the organization's mission and values, they come in very handy to solve conflict sometimes, if it's about vision or if it's about a direction or if it's about habits. But understanding possible outcomes, yes, going through the legitimacy and understanding one another's interests is part of that communication. So we do have time for one more 5-minute scenario, and to be able to get back and talk through it, and then we'll wrap it up.
Perfect. I'll go through it. A mission-driven organization's task force is reviewing their strategic plan from 2021. There are a few action items left to complete by the end of 2024. One of the co-chairs suggests that the national climate has shifted, and while these objectives sounded good at the time in 2021, they aren't as critical now as our focus has shifted as well. The other co-chair responds that fidelity to the strategic plan, loyalty to what they decided, is only the way forward for cultural change, and the objectives need to be completed by November 15th instead of December 31st. So really imagining that you're on this task force, really there's multiple layers of conflict here. And so what we would love for you to do is same questions, is to go into your breakout groups and say, where is the conflict that you notice the most or that you resonate with the most? What conflict management strategies are they displaying? And then which style do you think would be most effective? And then if you could come back with a couple of thoughts to wrap up our time together, that would be greatly appreciated. So we'll give about a little bit less time. So we'll give about 4 to 5 minutes for this one.
Do you have anything to share from that session? Is there any common themes that happened, or did you have some experiences shared or wisdom that would be helpful for the group?
Hey, so I'll share. And so I think I can see both sides in this. One, that there is a big difference in the time from 2021 to 2024, where depending on how you look at the program year, that's just roughly 3 to 4 years. Constituents can change. Climate, as mentioned in the story, can change. And so at least there should be both fidelity and adaptability, I think, in this scenario. And it seems both co-chairs are not willing to accommodate one another in that. And so Dana and I kind of spoke about that in terms, I think preferably there should be some level of accommodation here for this scenario. So yeah.
Thanks, Anthony. It's a good word. Oh, and if it's the co-chairs of the task force too, what a shame that if they were missing each other, if they were having conflicts, because what they're on the same trajectory in terms of mission, they're really trying to do the same work, but it happens.
That was the point that I made on it too, is that they had multiple heads come together to originally decide the strategic plan, and now the co-chair is coming back and saying, well, we're going a different route, but we really have we really addressed what was originally discussed that needed to take place for the strategic plan back in 2021. The climate may have changed, but if we have not addressed those old items, they're probably still lingering, and then now we're adding a new shift to what's previously been identified, and they could probably just add that to the list of things that need to be done, versus doing one or the other.
Thank you, Ashley. And shout out to everybody from Waco Family Medicine that's here. I just feel like my people showing up. That's so cool. And en masse. Very cool. Very cool. Very encouraging. We're gonna head towards the end here. Just some practical takeaways. A healthy organizational culture, it depends on healthy, productive dialogue, including healthy conflict. And these conflict management strategies can help with that. They can help us proactively work towards solutions and address conflict at low levels. And we looked at some of those common toxic traits, and we're always bringing in psychological safety, as if you're proactively building psychological safety, those traits are going to be suppressed. And understanding begins the process of successful negotiations of conflict, both understanding yourself, your own interests, as well as the interests of others. Here's these articles with some of this research that we were looking at. And Elisa, I look to you to take us home.
Hey, laying on this plane. We have a meeting with Anthony in 30 minutes. The certificate of completion we want to be able to offer to all of you who have took the time out of your day to engage in this material, and also really doing your own homework for each of your organizations, analyzing what policies may already exist in regards to conflict, and then also where do you see conflict really kind of hindering the culture that you're trying to create within your organizations. And I believe every organization represented here is mission driven. They have a cause, they have a purpose for the communities that they are serving. And so we want to be able to assist with that. And so when you have be able to register for part 2, and then you will be able to receive a certificate of completion from the Cultured Enough team as well. And then we want to be able to give you all kind of access to the e-learning platform. Conflict is only the surface. When we talk about conflict, we haven't even talked about gender dynamics, power dynamics, racial dynamics. It's a very layered topic. It's a very layered approach. And so we want to be able to give you access to literature, to language, to research, so that you could be able to implement the culture that you desire to see within the organization, so that you yourself is empowered whether you're a manager or an employee. We want you to be empowered, but we also want your organization to have missional alignment within the culture and what you're creating with your organization. And so feel free to fill this out, and we'll be in contact with you for a demo and to just show you how you can integrate competencies, how you can integrate behaviors, values that you desire to see within your organization, just to promote the culture as well. So thank you so much for your time. It is 3 on the dot, and we appreciate you leaning in to these discussions, and we will see you in September. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you all, everybody. Be encouraged as you do this good work in your orgs.
Thank you, team.
Adios.